Less than 3 weeks to go until the NBA trade deadline. Rumors are heating up around the league as journalists, GMs, players try to figure out what stars could be on the move between now and then. And the name you hear over and over again is Amari Stoudemire for a lot of sort of obvious reasons. He's a free agent to be, for one, and the Suns are looking to shed some salary for two. He makes a lot of money. They may not retain him in the summer. Assuming he's available, and that seems like a fair assumption at this point, what team should be most interested in his services here for the back half of the season?
Well, an interesting name that came up was Stoudemire himself brought up the New Jersey Nets team when he was asked about them, knowing that they would have a lot of cap room. And he said, I like a lot of these young pieces that they have, and it'll only take a couple more good pieces for them to be a much improved team. So he himself kind of threw that one out there.
And that assumes that they were able to sign him in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's looking at some of the teams that may have cap room. And I think that, I think a team like for Amari, I think is like the Miami Heat. You have to watch for it. They have a lot of cap space next summer. They obviously have a guy that's space for him if they're going to play possibly, play Beasley at the 3 or maybe move Beasley. You never know. But I think that that's a good place for him, especially playing alongside Dwayne Wade.
How much better would that make them in this year's playoffs?
Well, I think it would make them much better. I think they have a guy that's been somewhat of a number one guy that now all of a sudden he's your number 2 guy. If Dwayne Wade, and now if he's having an off day, now you can see them having a guy that can be more of a go-to guy they can give the basketball to. He's good in pick-and-roll basketball. So I think that, and in the East, he can play against most teams. He can play center over there also. So I think that he can be a good fit for them.
Well, what about playoff teams, Mike, that could be interested in Stoudemire?
I think the biggest concern is number of games that he's missed, okay, injury-prone. And secondly, you're talking about using up a lot of your money that you have maybe held up to this point. Now, if you make that commitment, make that decision, and if it's wrong and you're then locked into him for a long period of time, there are a couple of teams out there that went out and signed some big-name free agents a year ago, and their teams aren't doing too well right now.
Right.
And they've got those contracts to live with for a long time, so that can make it hard for you to improve as a team.
Meanwhile, Chris Bosh, of course, is part of that much-anticipated free agent class of 2010. General Manager Brian Colangelo came out in the Toronto papers and said, we have no intention of trading Chris Bosh, and we would like him to be here for the long-term future of the Toronto Raptors.
That's the correct thing to say.
That's a perfectly logical thing to say. It doesn't mean that there's still no chance that they might deal him. If they think that there's no chance of re-signing him, then maybe at least they get something in the short term.
That translation to me means that we haven't found the right deal yet.
Or that's a possibility as well if you're reading the tea leaves. So what teams out there should be nibbling to see what the interest level might be in the next month?
This is the guy that I've just seen that just had to see him in the Chicago Bulls uniform. Because I think that ultimately if they can get that guy that can score on the block, make plays, I mean, he's just like a perfect fit for them. I mean, it's more of something I wanted to see. I don't know if that's anything that can happen, but that's a team that I think is somewhat close, and if they can get a guy like him, I think they can take, propel up closer to those type of teams in the East.
They have not had a true post scorer in years now. Who else? Where else would he look?
Miami is another name that's been involved with Bosh as you go along, and one thing you need to keep in mind about Bosh, Chris Bosh is a little bit different. He's not necessarily one of those guys that, hey, we buddy up, amigos, 2 or 3 of us together. He's his own man, makes his own decisions, kind of, goes to a different beat, and it'll be interesting to see where he winds up, and maybe more importantly, where does he fall in that pecking order of who they're going after first, second, third, and then where do the monies go from there?
You mean after LeBron and Dwayne Wade?
Well, you got to put him somewhere in line.
Some of the names that are out there, a veteran scorer out there who is more than likely available right now is Antoine Jamison. With all the Wizards' trouble, they're not going to the playoffs, obviously. This guy has been a professional shot maker for years. He's still a scorer. He still rebounds the basketball. I would think a lot of teams would have interest in Antoine Jamison.
Well, early on, the word was that the Cleveland Cavaliers were thinking about giving up Zydrunas Ilgauskas, whose contract was up at the end of the year, for Jamison. They really liked the fit of Jamison because of his ability to play outside or put the ball on the floor a little bit and go to the basket. The one thing about Cleveland is Mike Brown, Danny Ferry, the general manager there, they're very loyal guys, and they really like this team. They like the chemistry that this team has. So it's unlikely to me that they would want to break this thing up to bring another guy in right now at this point, but remains to be seen.
You could also have one of those trade him, buyout, he returns in 30 days scenarios with Ilgauskas.
Can you plan that?
Well, then, then they're going to cut him once he gets traded and then he's waived.
And then he winds up coming back anyway. It's been known to happen.
It has happened.
Those deals. Yeah,
it has happened.
Just can't be part of it.
Who else would be interested in Jameson?
I think he's a good match. To me, he's that guy that can play anywhere. But I think from a playoff team standpoint, I think Cleveland obviously is the best fit. It's maybe another team like Denver could use him. I'm not sure who they could move, but I think that they could need more bigs, and they don't really have a stretch big that can go out and shoot some three. I think that has really helped them, especially when you playing the different teams and the versatility that you have out west.
Just some of the names being mentioned. There are tons of others out there of varying levels of stardom, including Troy Murphy, who's got another big contract year after this one, another big salary year, I should say. Brendan Haywood, also from that Wizards team, would bring size to a playoff contender. And Andre Iguodala, I've heard a little less about in terms of a potential trade, but evidently his name is being floated out there as well. Of these three, who do you see most likely to move?
Well, I don't understand the Iguodala thing. I thought he's like the piece that Philly was building around as they move forward. Then again, you don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but I was kind of perplexed by that one, why they would be willing to trade him. I mean, where are you going without him?
Yeah, I think if Andre gets moved, I think it's just totally to rebuild, and you're going for cap space. I don't see any other reason just to trade him for another guy. I don't see that happen unless you can move him for Tracy McGrady or somebody who's coming off the cap. But I think Brendan Haywood, he's a free agent. I mean, I think Washington somewhat feels like he's not going to return or that he's not in their plans, and I think that Brendan may be, out of those three, the more likely to be moved.
That seems like the more obvious one. Everybody's looking for size come playoff time in a playoff series against, say, the Cavaliers.
I think they can get more for Brendan because of the fact that he's a free agent. I think that, with not having that extra year going into the free agency, people will be more inclined to give up more for that.
And Murphy, if you're a team willing to take on that money, where would he be a good fit?
You've got to like his style of play. He's not a major rebounder.
Right.
He's a guy who would rather pull up, at the top of the circle and shoot three-point shots. A very good free throw shooter because he has that little fake and go move driving the ball to his left hand. But he's got to fit into your style of play to go after somebody like that.
All right, much intrigue. Less than 3 weeks to go till the NBA trade deadline. We'll see what, if anything, ultimately gets done.
Are we allowed to bring up some other names that might be
out
there? I mean,
what do you got?
I just got a couple, maybe.
Go ahead.
You know something we don't?
Well, I just hear like you hear and you hear, but Tayshaun Prince's name has been out there, and then
his teammate, Rip Hamilton,
Caron Butler, which Miami could be interested. He originally was with the Miami Heat before going to L.A. in the Shaq trade. And then what about the big decision on Carlos Boozer, whether or not Utah would be willing to do something now, knowing that Boozer could walk away at the end of the year?
Do any of these top free agents get traded? If a team feel like they can't re-sign them, do a Joe Johnson. Are you sure about him?
Joe Johnson, really?
He already turned down a big deal.
Really?
Do you just take that risk?
With the Hawks battling for a top playoff
Can't do that.
spot.
Can't do that if you're Atlanta right now.
I'm just saying, do you take that risk?
He can't do it, though. Yeah, they're
right there.
They're like number 2 going into tonight.
I mean, it was just questions. Like, I read and you read.
I understand.
Yeah. We hear things. Things are heard. I think Eric's just stirring up trouble. I think that's what that is.
That's not.
You're just stirring up trouble.
I said I read it.
You're causing trouble.
If I read it, how do I stir up trouble?
I think you're causing trouble.
Read it just like you. I know what I would do, but I'm not making those decisions.
All right. We'll see what happens between now and the actual trade deadline.
Good luck.